just put my liner across it. And I get my handy dandy cardstock template out. Grab an ink pen. And I mark it. Not all the way across like some people do, but just so I'll be able to have some lines to cut it to whenever I get to the point where I can cut it out. Now, as you can see, it's basically outlined, but I just don't outline the entire thing. Don't want to waste the ink or mess up my paper. Can you see everything here? I think you can. All right. So then I've got this little metal ruler. I find that it helps not bend in inappropriate places. And cut out my template. My knife isn't as sharp as it should be because I've been cutting out so many of these, but you can see the basic way that I cut it out. I could pause it, but the last time I paused it, I ran the risk of not unpausing it and messed up my entire video. So right now I'll just leave it on. I may pause it when it gets to the sewing part. Okay, all my scraps, and I got this bowl that I usually just put all the scraps in. All right, ready to go sew. So now I'm going to move this up here. And get ready to sew it. Let's see, do you have a good view here of my sewing machine? Yes. Maybe I should put this on the other side. Nah, this will be good. All right. Now, I generally sew it on the white part or the liner part because I can see better. And I just, again, make sure all my lines are aligned. Now, I generally use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and on this side you're going to leave a little bit of a gap so you can turn it inside out. All right, make sure my machine is on. Go ahead and set my needle. There we go. A couple things backwards, a couple to lock the stitch in, and here we go. Oops, went a little bit too close, but that's okay. maybe one more. And backspace again to lock the stitch. And where's my, there it is, my little snippers that I've totally got to where I can't do without them. And just snip all the edges off. There. Throw this away. Now, you see I have a nice little thing here. And what I do at this point, I take a little piece of chalk, blue, and, well, I can't do that yet. First thing I've got to do is measure for my nose bridge. So I get the meter side of my ruler. It's usually 15 millimeters across. So I make sure it's centered. Take my ink pen again. There we go. And 7.5 is a halfway inch, so I mark that within the seam allowance so it won't show in the final part. And then I measure like half, 8.5 and 0, because the nose things that I'm using, nose bridges, are 8.5 millimeters wide. Take that off. Grab me a nose bridge and stick her on. And if it doesn't automatically come out, don't worry about it. Then what I do is I trim the excess off the edges of the corners. That way when you turn it inside out, the corners won't be quite so bulky. Don't get too close to the line, because sometimes, depending upon the fabric, it might unravel and you'll have a little gap there. Did that once and had to go back and double sew over it. You really just don't want to have to do any extra work if you can get away with it. Okay. All done. Now I'm going to quickly turn on my iron, let it heat up. There we go. While I turn this inside out. Fighting with it sometimes to get it totally turned inside out, but just keep working with it and it'll get there. And you'll want to make sure all the little points are sharp and pointed. If you don't, you might have to take your scissors and go inside and point them again. There we go. Now, when we iron that, we're going to iron this inside, so because we're going to sew the top stitch all over it. Now, just to make sure the ends are pointy, those two are kind of iffy, so I'll put my scissors in and punch them a little bit. Not too hard, because you don't want to punch it through. Okay. There we go. Now, I'm going to go iron them, and I will have to readjust my camera. Voila. Got a lot of little fuzzies on my ironing board. For some reason it likes to collect fuzz, and since I cut out something with fleece on it yesterday, I have a lot of extra fuzzies than I normally do. Okay. And make sure you have the part with your nose bridge up at the top, and you push it as far as it will go, because you're going to be sewing over that, and then iron it flat as much as you can. Looks like I still have a little extra on this side, so get my scissors, go back in there and make sure it's pointy. There we go. Iron that down. You're always having to check and double check again. Now, for the part where the hole is, I generally just stretch it across and it will generally fold in itself. But a lot of times I want to make sure that the white isn't going to go over the colored part because I'm just a perfectionist. That's all. Okay. All right, that's all ironed. Now, at this point, I'm going to iron in some folds. And I take about 2 inches here, fold it over. I generally make sure that I've got a little bit extra on each side. And then iron that flat. Some people are really more of a perfectionist, so they prefer this to be about 2 inches. And I've pretty much got to where I can eyeball it. Alright, got that cool? Well, they didn't give me much of a crease. Get that fuzzy off of there. That's good enough. Do the same thing for the bottom. Again, about 2 inches wide. Making sure it's straight across. This looks a little less than 2, but it'll be okay. Yeah, it's a little bit less than 2. I might need to go up just a smidge more on that. Okay, now turn your iron off. And we are ready to go do the top stitching. Fleece has gotten everywhere. My daughter has decided she wants to get a rat or two, and she bought a rat cage the other day and proceeded to have me buy some fleece to make a rat hammock out of. And I did so and found that that fleece is very difficult to what's the word? It sheds a lot, kind of like my rag dolls. Okay, now open this up and you can see the lines there, and put it to where the thing is, the nose bridge is toward you, because I'm going to take a little piece of blue chalk and mark some areas. That's going to be my guide when I sew around it, and you'll see. Now I generally start sewing with the nose bridge up at the top, and I sew here, and it's only like 1/8 of an inch of seam allowance. So, all right, here we go. I'll be going a little bit slower this time. Not that slow, but my machine is slow whenever I just do general back stitching. Okay. Lift it and twist it, turn your material, and do the corner. lift, put it back down again, and long side, and this will also close that opening where you turned your material inside out. Try to keep your lines as straight as possible. Sometimes you might need an extra stitch. There we go. To say I really love my Brother sewing machine. Had to get a new one after I broke my last machine on Uncle Richard's Alabama fabric. But I dearly love this one, so it's no big loss. Okay, now you're coming upon your nose bridge, so watch carefully how I do this. It's not that difficult, but you do want to be careful. Out the blue line, so I lift it and I turn it this way, put it back down. Now I go about 4 stitches towards you. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back 4 stitches. 3, 4, and I noticed going backwards it takes me beyond my initial sewing line. That's okay. That's kind of a nice thing. Then you go forward toward you 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then lift your presser foot, pivot, and let it down. And then you go all the way across to the blue line, trying to keep it as straight as you can. One more. Okay, now that you're already this far, you only put 1 stitch toward you, and then 4 stitches back. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I reinforce it by going 3 again, and then 2. There. Then I pivot, come down. While I'm here, I might as well cut off these extra strings because you don't want them to get caught up in your sewing when you finish. Pivot. And pivot. And maybe one more. Then pivot. And we're finished with the top stitching. Now don't worry if that's a little bit thick looking because it's going to be covered. All right, now, pretty? Sometimes you can just go in and brush off some of that blue, but the first time they wash it, it will go away. Very nice. Okay, well, I'll just leave this up here because I'm going to be doing the top stitching next. Strands, get back there. Doesn't matter which side you do first because they're both going to be about the same. So you need to make sure you follow your line. And this is just a straight line across. Again, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And here we go. I generally take a couple stitches and then back stitch a couple, and then go forward. And I find that if it's a little bit thick there, I generally lift my presser foot just a smidge until I get over that thick part. And then go to town. Some people don't even bother to backstitch at this point because it's going to go to the inside of the mask, but I like to reinforce things where I can. But I find that sometimes if my tension isn't properly and the strings get caught up, you can go ahead and trim off some of that excess so it just doesn't bunch up. Sometimes the strings get caught. Okay. Other side. Generally like this one to be out of the way. Make sure it's even, which it is. I'm always pulling off fuzzies. All right. Okay, grab my other end, and here we go. Pull it straight across because it just seems to help me keep my excess threads easier to cut off. I forgot why I did that initially. Okay, now you have your basic mask. Alright, now what we do next, I don't know if y'all have these, but these are wonderful. I get 4 of these little clips, I don't know, called magic clips. And this is where you make the 3D portion of your mask. You fold it toward the white side is toward you, or the liner, whatever color you use. And you want to make this angle into an N, or in some cases, a backwards looking N. And then you pin it. Can you see? I'm going to put this just a smidge closer. That's because I'm not looking at my camera right now. I can't see what y'all see. But you do the bottom part the exact same way. Now this time, it makes much more of a definite N. It's not a backwards N like that one is. And you pin it. You can use your regular stick pins, but I think that the fewer holes you poke in the masks, the better. Do the same thing for the other side. Makes a nice angled N, or reverse N. Pin it. And then, same thing for the bottom. And pin it. Now, the way I used to make my masks, I would at this point sew these both, and then turn this in with my straps and sew it again, but I've cut out that second part because I have found that it's not needed. So I grabbed me a couple of my preformed mask things, and you try to get 2 that are about the same size. So these are about 11 inches long, and I sew them together. Those are about the same. But I have had requests for longer ones, so I have made them 12 inches for my extra large masks. So anyway, now what I do, and this is a little bit awkward, but works nicely. Hope you can see this. I'll get out of the way. This is where, get out of there, Fussy. You take one of your thingies, and this is where I sewed it together. It's got a little string hanging from that. I need to clip that off. And you put that in the middle. And you notice I still haven't sewn these down yet. So I'm going to fold this over and catch the sides and repin them. like so. Do the same on the other side. Get the thingy. I still have a little extra on that as well. Okay, put it down there, fold it over, and re-pin these without letting anything slip. There we go. And you can basically see how your mask is taking form. All right, back to the sewing machine. Now, this won't take long at all. Make sure you hold this in, because when you pull the thing off, you don't want your thing to slide, and it looks like it might have slid a little bit, so I just pull it over again just a smidge, making sure it's going to catch when I sew it here. And I put it down, and it's going to be really thick, so I set my needle, and then I pull my zip foot up, and then I press in my little button, and then I let it down, and that way it makes it go over the thicker fabric. So I go about 6 stitches before I back stitch on this. And I use this little part to keep my line straight, using that line as a guide. So I go backwards. And this makes sure going backwards a little bit longer than normal gives it a little bit more stability. So you don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to bust through if they pull on it too much. All right, now making sure that the bottom part is okay. Now, finish sewing it. That's one side down. And clip the little corners on both sides, and on the other side as well. Clip them as close as you can get. There we go. Throw away those. And again, I'm just throwing away my extra things in this little bowl to keep it all nice and out of my way. All right, last side. Sometimes I just look at the opposite side just to kind of eyeball how close it is, and this one's a little bit closer than that, so I might want to pull it over just a smidge, making sure, yeah, it's gonna catch, no problem. Okay, and if it's not perfectly as far over as that one is, don't worry about it. It's handmade. It's gonna be a little bit off. Okay, set your thread, lift your presser foot. There we go. Get it. And generally I stop, take my other pin off, make sure, yeah, it's good. Straighten anything out. Push it over if I need to, and finish it up. And that gets the sewing part of the mask done. Clip your threads, just like before. Throw them away. Now, hopefully you've got a nice straight line that shows on the other side. Well, you can see the back stitching, but that's not a bad thing. Okay, last thing I do Make sure that this is up at the top. I get a couple of little handy dandy silicone cord stops. And I use a bobby pin. I go about 3/4 of the way down, so it'll hang at the bottom of your ear, but of course they can adjust that. And I take my bobby pin, find the larger opening, stick it through, make sure it comes out the other side, and then just pull it taut. Easy peasy. Same thing on the other side, making sure it's straight. There's no measuring this, just eyeball it. Stick that in there. Pull it out. Go. At this point, I fold it in half. Straighten out all my folds. And there is the mask. At this point, because I have cats and the cats leave fur everywhere, I immediately put the mask in a bag. Keep all the little fuzzies from getting on it. Pull off the top. And you can also buy these at Amazon if you decide you want to sell yours, or put them in a little mask or baggies to give away. And that's it. Now I'm going to turn the thing off and watch it, and if it looks okay, I'm going to go ahead and send it. Bye.